having the books near me, I feel like I'm absorbing stories. You're only a real gamer if you've used the Atari or something, and I'm just like, I didn't have that. I don't know if I was born by then. I was trying to force all my friends to play it, and they were just like, Sarah, I just want to chill. So I think what having a diverse workforce especially can do is it just creates more ideas, and with more ideas you can you've got more to choose from to select the best ones, I guess. I hope you get rich. Games like The Sims and Animal Crossing and Life is Strange, they're sort of all have more of this idea of the feminine design, and they're all huge. There are lots of people in our industry who look down on those roles. I think there's some catching up to do. Let's leave it there.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarthak. You're watching Spawn Point, and today I'm joined by Sarah Longthorne from Sumo Digital. How are you, Sarah?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I was just sweating a couple of moments ago until I turned the AC on, and neither I'm sweating nor my laptop's overheating, so it's all good now.
All sounds great.
But before I jump into all the questions that I have for you, I see quite a long bookshelf behind you. Can you tell me which one's your favorite?
Oh God, favorite book. So I actually have 3 bookshelves. My favorite books are probably the ones downstairs.
Oh my God.
I think it depends on genre, but in terms of storytelling, I really like Brandon Sanderson, and his works are all downstairs. I think Captain Corelli's Mandolin is my favorite, and that's in the other room in my bedroom. But...
Do you have the bad habit of stacking books that you never end up reading?
Yes. What's that word? It's called sundoku or something like that. I think that's the word for it, for buying books and then feeling like you've read them just by buying them. And I definitely have that.
Yeah.
It's this weird passive energy osmosis of having the books near me. I feel like I'm absorbing stories.
I get it, exactly. I've got so many books stacked on right beside my table, and I've never read most of them. But I still like having them next to me.
Exactly. It feels really good just to be surrounded by books. I love going into Waterstones and then just feeling like there are all these little energy capsules just radiating at me, and I'm bathing in it.
That's an amazing feeling. But for those who don't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into the gaming industry?
Sure, yeah. So obviously, as mentioned, my name is Sarah Longthorne. I am a writer and narrative designer. I work at Sumo Digital in Nottingham. I am 27, grew up in the West Country in the UK, lived in a single parent household and everything, all that kind of stuff. I went to university at the University of East Anglia. I studied script writing and performance. I'm going to go back there actually at the end of this year for a part-time MA in prose. So after graduating, I sort of dabbled in a couple of different careers. I did 6 months as a travel agent. Very badly. I accidentally booked myself a £9,000 cruise and didn't realize it was not a good career choice for me. I worked.
Well, did you go on that cruise?
They wouldn't let me.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I didn't have £9,000, so they had to cancel it. But yeah, I thought, I didn't realize it was a live training system. So yeah, I did 3 months in a vanity publishing house, self-publishing, which is probably the worst company I've ever worked for. I don't think anyone can beat them. And then after that, I did 4 years of marketing, and the last 2 were at Jagex, home of RuneScape. So it was when I joined Jagex that I sort of realized that creative writing was something you could do for a living in games. You could be a narrative designer or a games writer. So I started pursuing that, but Jagex wasn't offering those positions. So eventually I jumped ship, and I sort of took a gamble on being a freelance narrative designer. And I'm glad that I only had to do it for 2 months, because it's very hard to start out as freelance. I did not earn very much money in that time, but it was enough to just scrape by until I got an in-house position at Fusebox Games, which makes the Love Island mobile game, which is actually so fun. It's so fun to work on that game. And yeah, I worked there for 9 months, and then yeah, I got an email from Sumo inviting me for an interview. So, and here I am.
Here you are on the current peak of your career at spawn point.
Hopefully not peaked yet. Hopefully.
Current peak. That's current peak. I have a couple of shows, and whenever I get guests, I tell them that this is the current peak of your career.
Nice. Yeah, I think I was talking to a friend the other day about the kids who peaked in primary school and how we were all really jealous of them at the time. It's like, oh, Claire can sing and she can draw really nice things. And we were like, oh, she's going to go so far. And now we're like, Claire.
I was one of those kids. I had like a
Yeah?
wee big trophy when I was in kindergarten.
Oh, you were a
And
trophy
now,
kid.
yeah, I was. And now when at the last year of my school, which was 12th grade, I just scored 86%. And from where I am from, that's like a untouchable class. And I didn't even end up going to university. So yeah. Okay.
Wow, you were a trophy kid though. Like all of us were so jealous of you. Like I remember going to people's houses and they had trophies, and I was like, oh my god, they have trophies.
That's exactly what happened. So we have got a staircase and there's like a shelf, and that shelf was lined with my trophies till I was in like 6th grade. Never got any other trophy after that, sadly.
I don't have any trophies that I can think of, so I'm still very envious of you and all your trophies.
All right, I'll go back in time and tell the 6th grade Sarthak that you're jealous of him.
Do that. If time travel becomes a thing, that's apparently your priority.
I will. That's like on the top of my list now.
Nice.
Okay, so we just dribble off in the conversation, but you told me about your favorite book. So did you play games also while growing up, and what was your favorite game?
Games growing up. So we didn't have any consoles or anything growing up. We were quite a low income family. The only thing we had was like my mum's very, very old PC. It was like Windows 98 for a very long time. And so I didn't play games properly until like I was like 17. But before that, I had 2 games that I played on that very old janky PC, and they were The Sims and Age of Empires, and I didn't play either of them properly. In the Age of Empires, I would just like making maps, and like how like in the map maker you can just like you can give yourself your population, you can max it out in the map maker. So I would just like max out like 200 like an army of like 200 war elephants. I just make this beautiful map, and then I play the game and just send the war elephants to kill this like tiny little village that hasn't even started yet. And yeah. And it was a similar story in The Sims. I would play that just to make Sims and make houses, and then I'd like play 5 minutes of the game and be like, I'm not making anything anymore. What's going on? And yeah, so that was my gaming growing up. But yeah, those are my 2 favorites and my 2 only games as a kid.
What about when you did grow up? What about when you were 17 or 18 and you got proper access to video games? What about then?
My first one was Skyrim. I remember I became friends with like a big group of boys at college, and they were all playing Skyrim and Fallout New Vegas. And I was like, Skyrim sounds great. I love dragons. I'm going to love this. And I did. It's not my favorite game, but it was for a very, very long time. I was trying to force all my friends to play it, and they were just like, Sarah, I just want to chill. But yeah, my favorite game though is The Witcher 3. Hands down. Everyone at work is like, Sarah, have you played other games? And I'm like, yeah, I just really like this one. So I will talk about this one forever.
Wait, I've got where's my dragon? Wait, I've got a dragon right here. That's a part of my show, but I couldn't find it. Yeah, here it is.
All right.
Right. Let me just set it up. Well, this dragon was on my first internship. I didn't get paid. They just gave me this dragon and a few free games. I was pretty happy, but I still use it as a prop. Hey.
Wow, paid in dragons. That's its own currency.
Paid in mini dragons. Right. So this goes right here.
Yeah. Nice.
And then I've also got these flames that go above it.
Oh my god. That's just too cool.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a part of my props that I didn't set up, and I got to show you in the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, we can play with perspective and pretend that the dragon is actually very far in the distance, and if we got closer to it, it would actually
like, ooh, now the dragon's huge.
Oh shit.
You better run.
Yeah. I hope that Zoom can protect me.
Okay, so that was all about games. And talking to you, I just realized that you are someone who's played your favorite games as someone that some of the games that I can remember playing. Other people that I've been talking to on this show, they're playing games on the NES, on the classic systems that I don't even know of. So yeah,
Yeah, I always feel kind of like left out when I like hear people talking about like these console games, like very old console games and everything that they were playing when I was a kid and I just didn't have access to. And they're just like, oh, you're only a real gamer if you've used the Atari or something. And I'm just like, I didn't have that. I don't know if I was born by then, but I definitely didn't have that. I just got my Sims. Please don't judge me.
well, in that case, I grew up on Snakes then. Yeah,
Oh
my
yeah, totally forgot about Snakes and Space
yeah,
Invaders
exactly.
on my little
That's something
Nokia.
everyone
Yeah.
played on Nokia.
Oh, so
My
good,
first
so good.
console was the PSP, I guess. Yeah, so it was pretty good for like
Nice.
for someone for the trophy kid from sixth grade. A PSP was pretty good, so I was
Yeah.
happy with that.
That's awesome.
So you've told me about your favorite book. Does that also happen to be the most influential book? Because
Uh,
on I work on a news website for gaming news, and when the news popped up that you were working on a fantasy story, that brought up some fire in our company. We were all talking about what's going on, what's going on. Sumo Digital working on LTR, what's going on, what's going on. So yeah, that was something.
yeah, I saw that. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to comment on anything to do with that because, as I'm sure you can imagine, it's NDA hell,
Of course.
and I don't want to get in trouble. So I can't comment on anything to do with what we're working on. Separately to that, in terms of most influential book, I would say it's not my favorite book now, but the most influential was The Hobbit for sure because I read it when I was like 7 or 8. I think my dad started reading it to me, and then I read it on my own. And it was the game that, not the game, sorry, the book that I ended up just like reading over and over again, and it sparked my love of fantasy, and it made me want to be a writer and to write fantasy. And I've loved that genre ever since. And I think like Lord of the Rings is a huge influence for me as well, and that was what led to Lord of the Rings. So, in terms of influence, absolutely The Hobbit.
I
Also,
think Tolkien is
dragons.
the Tolkien is the big daddy of fantasy and everyone who's interested in fantasy.
Exactly. I feel so what's the word? Basic saying that I like Tolkien because everyone who likes fantasy is like, "Oh, I love Tolkien." I'm just like, "Oh, I wish I could be more unique, but no, I love Tolkien." So there we go.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being Tolkien, but in fact, it sets you
Good.
apart on an elite tier that you have read Tolkien. If you've read the Silmarillion, then you can have extra bragging rights as well.
Oh, no, I've listened to the audiobooks. I haven't read them, but I used to listen to the audiobooks of them as a kid. I need to actually read them again. But yeah, I loved it still. But I don't quite have bragging rights there.
Okay, so now coming to the main juicy part of the show. The show is a bit about diversity and women in gaming. As a part of your job at your current position and even at your previous position, you have to write about various characters. They
Yeah.
may be from diverse backgrounds as well. So how do you research about your characters, your culture, their cultures, their ethnicities, to make sure they're not really stereotyped? They come out really authentic.
Yeah. Okay. So I think like obviously the first port of call here would be that I think if you are writing about experiences that aren't your own, then obviously you ideally want someone who's on the team who has those experiences to be able to write those characters and to be able to do so authentically. Because like for me as sort of a straightish white woman, I'm kind of like there's a lot of experiences that I just wouldn't know how to produce authentically. So the ideal situation is that you have someone like that on your team. And sort of below that on the tier, I guess it's like if you don't have that but you're being told you need to write this, then yeah, doing a lot of your own research online, but as well as that, making sure that you speak to lots of different people from the community. I'm saying this as if you, but like this is me, this is what I do. So I would speak to lots of different people from the community to get a sort of broad range of first-hand references, because I think like no group is a monolith, right? Everyone's going to be different. Everyone's going to have different perspectives on things and different experiences. So talking to as many people as possible, and also getting a sensitivity reader at multiple stages in the project. So I've definitely been in situations before in the past where we've had like some really well diversified teams, and that's absolutely helped so much because we were able to talk about such a broader breadth of experiences, and it absolutely made our game so much better for it. With Sumo, I would say that it's a bit difficult because as a mid-tier narrative designer, my impact is quite limited. So a lot of the time, when things come up, I'm in a position where I'll be able to flag it, and we have something called the diversity focus group, which spans all the Sumo studios. And so if something comes up where we're like, okay, we're touching on this topic here, I think we need to handle this with a bit more sensitivity and a bit more thought, then we will go to the diversity focus group, and we will talk to different people from across all our studios in like several different countries to try and get a feel for, okay, like what do we feel like the issues are here, what are our ideas for how this could be handled differently, and we will work together on a sort of proposal document for that, and take that to the key decision makers and basically just like do our best to make a case for it. So that's kind of how it's handled, I guess. But it's a bit difficult when you're not in that sort of decision-making seat to be able to really push for the things that matter to you sometimes. But yeah.
So, okay, for a moment, suppose that you were in that decision-making seat. How do you make your decisions then?
A lot of the time, if I want to make a decision, well, I can't really. I have to kind of, if I have an idea or if I feel like we're doing something wrong, then yeah, I kind of have to book out time with the key decision makers and basically present the best possible argument for my case. And they might agree or they might not. And I think in game dev, there's always that point where you have to kind of say, if they've said no and you've argued at your best, then you kind of have to accept it, to as much as possible. It can cause problems if like you're constantly banging the same drum and they've already said no to you. But it's tricky sometimes with certain topics. But yeah, I think it's very much you just like your power is in making your best possible case, and sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it does. But yeah.
So I'd like to bring out a business perspective on this.
Sure.
A video game company is concerned with making profits. That's done by selling more games. And as a gamer, while I can appreciate that the game was made by a diverse cast or has a diverse cast, at the end of the day, I really care about if this game is any good.
Yes.
So do you think diversity, both in terms of gender and ethnicity, brings about a positive change in the business model of video games?
I do, yeah. So I think what having a diverse workforce especially can do is it just creates more ideas, and with more ideas you've got more to choose from to select the best ones, I guess. I kind of imagine it as like if you're throwing a ball against one flat wall and it's just one angle, then it's always going to come back at the same sort of way and it's kind of predictable. Whereas if you have lots of different walls at different angles, when you throw the ball, it becomes more wild and unpredictable and more exciting. And I think that's what you get from having a more diverse workforce, is that you get lots of different perspectives that you wouldn't have thought of, and that's just one part of it. But that will just bring about so many more ideas, and I think there's a term, I think it's called productive dissension, which is like the process of like two conflicting ideas butting heads, and then from there figuring out a better idea which encompasses the best bits of both of those. And one upside of this is that you can have these conflicting ideas which produce a better one in the long term, which is exactly where you want to be in my opinion. And yeah, it's only by having those conflicts that you get to that better stage of ideation.
So how diverse is your workplace at Sumo Nottingham?
So Sumo, yeah, we have quite a few studios, but Sumo Nottingham, I'll be very honest, it still has quite a long way to go with regards to diversity in our office. we are making strides, and I know people in leadership especially are like very, very keen to continue pushing forwards with it. But yeah, it has a way to go currently.
And what about Sumo in general? I think there's a studio in London, and I don't know about the rest.
So there's the main studio is in Sheffield, and I think that one is a little bit better. I think that's quite good. We also have studios. Oh, there's loads now. We have the Chinese room in Brighton. We have Sumo Newcastle studio. There's one in Leamington. We also now have a studio in India, in Pune, and we have I think we've acquired 2 studios in the US and Canada. And yeah, I don't know about those ones about US and Canada. And yeah, I don't have massive visibility on the other Sumo studios, but yeah, I've visited Sheffield a couple of times, and I work with a couple of people there. And yeah, Nottingham is Nottingham. So
Okay, coming to your specific role in the video game industry, from what I've heard, majority of the video game writers and narrative designers are male. So are there any stigmas or stereotypes attached to a female narrative designer in the video game industry, especially at the AAA level?
I've not encountered any. No, I'm sure there are, but people don't want to tell me. That's probably how it is. But no, I've not encountered anything like that.
That's great. My next question would have been, how did you face them? How did you brave them? But now that's out of the way now.
Well, yeah, I think things that were specifically about my gender, no, I've done quite well with that. I've had things which were to do with the fact that I was a narrative designer or a writer. There are lots of people in our industry who look down on those roles. I think everyone's got that feeling of like, oh, I could have been a writer. I just like haven't bothered to write a book yet. Like I could do that easily, because I mean everyone can write at a basic level, but it's like it takes a lot more practice and training to actually write professionally. And I think people kind of get that sense that they could have done it. So they kind of look down on people who do it professionally, because they're like, why should we be paying them as much as I get paid? Like I could probably do it. Or you know, oh, it's just a story, it doesn't matter. But the fact is when you treat story as an afterthought, then you get tanked in your ratings. And
Wait,
I don't know,
really? Is
a
that
lot
how
of time,
people think?
yeah. So I think
Man.
a while ago, I've had 2 different things. A while ago, I'd finished up something it had taken like 2 weeks to do, and I was kind of proud of it because it was the first bit of work I'd done for these specific people. And I took them to the lead designer, and he told me to my face, oh, I don't care about that, it's only the narrative. Like I don't care about giving you any feedback. And that was
That's
just
that.
like baffling to me. Yeah. There was another time as well when they kept changing the design of the game and not telling me, and that obviously has like a big impact on the narrative. And yeah, the guy kept changing it, and I said to him, like, it looks like you're going to end up changing it again into this direction, and if we do, then we need to take this other direction with the narrative. And it turned out a few months later we did a play test and he had changed it, but he hadn't wanted to tell anyone, so he just rewritten it all himself and hadn't told anyone he'd rewritten it to fit the new design. And oh god, yeah, that was fun.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the first time I've heard it from a professional, because from a reviewer standpoint of view, if a game's got a good story, it's easily a 7. Even if it's got unplayable gameplay and a good story, it's easily a 7 from me.
Exactly, right? Having a good story can absolutely swing the reviews of a game, and reviews are they're so important. And yet, yeah, people just like, they just think it's not, you know, important, so they can just get tacked on the end. But the thing is, I guess, that people don't realize is that, you know, story, whilst writing can be quite a flexible thing, it's also, if you want to do it as good as it can be, then it needs to be treated with a bit more respect and care and detail. So
I've been
yeah.
actually, can I talk about another game on this podcast, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I've actually been playing Red Dead Redemption for a
yeah.
work thing
Nice, yeah.
recently. And the story, especially the side stories that you encounter in the world, they're absolutely on a next level, especially the
Yeah,
dialogue writing. I've got a
yeah,
hats off for those narrative designers as well.
yeah.
Maybe I'll just whip up an email for them as well after finishing this up.
Do it. Yeah, it can absolutely transform a game, and yet still it's kind of I think there's some catching up to do. Let's leave it there.
This is like out of the question list that I shared with you. But what's the most important aspect of a video game development? Is it the design? Is it the programming? I just thought it was the narrative, and especially a AAA title with adventure and stuff.
Yeah,
So what is it then?
I don't think it can be put down to a single thing. I think each game is a sum of everything, and it depends on the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's also very subjective. So for me, I love either puzzlers or narrative games. So for me, with a narrative game, I'm most interested in how they have blended in having a good story, but also how they've blended the story with the design and used the design to really tell those stories as best they can. Actually, a game that I've been talking about recently quite a lot, Signs of the Sojourner. I don't know if you've played that one or heard of it,
No,
but that
I haven't.
game, it's so good. It has one of the most innovative narrative designs I've seen in a long time, because the game design is the narrative. It's a deck building card game, which is about communicating with people. And this whole idea is, rather than trying to beat your opponent, you're trying to sort of meet them on their level to have a conversation. So all the cards represent different kinds of conversation, like, being sort of empathetic or being assertive, and you're trying to sort of match them on their level to create a chord. And depending on where you travel to, you'll find people with different cards, and you have to kind of make a decision about, do I want to keep the cards I currently have and risk not being able to understand the people that I'm talking to, so that I can still talk to my friends from home and like still be friends with them? Or do I want to kind of leave behind who I was and the people that I was friends with, so that I can make new friends and explore the world? And the story comes so much from the design. It's one of the best examples that I can think of for like this fantastic interplay between narrative and design. It's perfect in my mind. It's
I think
punishing, but it's perfect.
hey, you've just added a game to my to play list, which is already
Nice.
too big right now.
Make time for it. So good.
Yeah, it's like very confusing that you have to play games for work, and then you also, when you have free time, then you're also playing games. So
Yeah,
that's the only thing I do.
absolutely. I think one of the most confusing things is that when you're starting a new project and you need to play reference titles, and Sumo is,
Mhm.
I think this should be the standard, but Sumo is very good in the sense that, they will let you do that in your work time. And I feel like such a fraud sometimes. I'm like at work and I'm just playing like this great game, and I'm like, I'm being paid to play this great game, and this is legit work, and it feels great. It's definitely quite a privileged position to be in, I think, sometimes in our
Okay,
industry.
we've been talking a lot about games. If you were the creative director of a AAA title and you had no restrictions on anything, you have infinite budget and no one bugging you about to change something or something, what would that game look like?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about it from a few different angles.
Mhm.
So in terms of the design, I'm really interested in this concept that like Brie Code has been talking about, like feminine design. And like,
Mhm.
for example, the mobile market is absolutely huge. Like games like The Sims and Animal Crossing and Life is Strange, they're sort of like all have more of like this idea of like the feminine design, and they're all huge. And a lot of the time, in especially in the AAA space, we get people saying, "Oh, they're not real games," and yet they make up so much of the market. And so for me, I'm really interested in feminine game design. And
What
uh,
exactly is feminine game design?
so it's basically, I think the best way to describe it is that like a lot of us have, I have a lot of like girlfriends who are like, "Oh, I'm not a gamer. I don't like games," but they will
Mhm.
play mobile games till to
Mhm.
death to us part. They'll play like The Sims. They've been playing Sims since they're like 11. Like, "Oh, I'm not a gamer. I'm not a gamer." And so Bree's work has been like looking into the kinds of design that appeal to those sorts of people with more like traditionally femme interests. And a lot of the time it's stuff which allows people to be creative, like The Sims or like Animal Crossing, or which allows the player to like explore interpersonal relationships. So for example, in Life is Strange, things which are more cooperative, rather than competitive, and maybe slightly lower on the adrenaline side. Like occasional, like things like combat and stuff tend to be a bit lower. So like I'm definitely an example of someone who prefers feminine design, in the sense that, yeah, like this idea of being cooperative and being creative rather than being competitive, and getting dopamine out of destroying things. I get dopamine out of creating things more often. And so I think if I was to make my own game, then I would probably do something which maybe explores some of that more creativity and relationship focused design, which is more cooperative. And we're seeing so much of that in like the indie space and the mobile space. And I just want that to enter AAA yesterday, so that people outside of like the game sphere can be like, oh yeah, I love games. Because I think that anyone can love games if they are playing the games that are sort of designed for them. And I think a lot of the time, especially in AAA, we're not designing for a lot of those audiences. We're leaving that to mobile, and that just seems like such like, especially by business wise, it seems like a missed opportunity. So design wise, I'd do something along those lines. In terms of story, I'd probably want to do something. I'd want to do a fantasy. I'm actually writing a fantasy novel, and I'd probably just do that. I won't go into masses of detail because I'm unnecessarily paranoid about my ideas.
Being
But
linked.
yeah, even they're probably not even that good. But I'm just like, oh my god, what if someone likes it and writes it before me, and then accuses me of copying them, so I can't talk about it. But yeah, it's kind of, to talk about it in a sort of a zoomed out way. It's a fantasy which kind of explores ideas about like trauma and mental health and femininity in a fantasy universe, and what that could look like, and ideas about like things like gender and stuff. And so I guess one of the things that I will talk about is this idea that the religion in this world is this idea that women create and men destroy. And that is the belief of these people, because their god, the goddess, is the goddess of creation and life, and their god is the god of death and destruction. And so everyone thinks they need to fall into these categories, and it's this exploration of like, actually that kind of thinking harms both men and women and anyone in between, because a lot of women, like, the act of creation requires self-sacrifice, and you're kind of being asked to sacrifice some of yourself, and that's not always fair. Whereas on the other side, it's kind of toxic for us to always be asking men to destroy and to hurt. Like, so many men want to create and want to nurture, and it kind of has like a parallel, I think, with some of what we see sometimes in like our gender roles, and just this idea that people should just be able to do what they love and just to do what they want and express themselves however they want. So that's what I would do.
That really sounds like a great game idea that I want to play. If I ever come in for a huge sum of money, I'm gonna give it to you to make that game.
Awesome. I hope you get rich.
Okay, so I've got just a couple of more questions here.
Sure.
From someone who's worked in the gaming media industry, not the development industry,
Mm-hmm.
I know that the gaming industry is not very diverse in terms of ethnicity or in terms of gender. While from a gamer's perspective, I don't really care. As long as I'm getting good games, I'm good. I'm all up for that. But as like an activist, or maybe as a brown person, or as someone who's just passionate about diversity, I really want to support diversity in video games. So is there something that gamers can do to support diversity and inclusivity in the AAA genre, or gaming at large?
I think this is going to be quite a boring answer, but it's the standard vote with your wallet sort of thing, I think, is the thing that comes to mind, because the people who make those decisions are the publishers and the execs, and they are money focused. They're going to be thinking, okay, what's the safest way that we can ensure that our next game is a success? Let's see what's making money. And they will just, we're seeing a lot of like, now-like games, like Souls-like games, or that just take the last thing that made a lot of money and make something that's kind of derivative of that, or kind of maybe improving upon that. But it's like how everything now is open world, for instance, and kind of it has to have 80 hours of content and everything.
They've also been saying stuff that's very similar to Zelda BOTW, with a similar design sorting and similar combat and stuff.
Exactly. It's like, I think a lot of the decision making, especially on the publishing side, is often quite it's quite safe. They like to play it safe. From what I've seen, there's not very many publishers who are taking risks. They want to invest in things that they're fairly confident they're going to make a return, so they do something similar to the last thing that made a lot of money. So I think the best thing that gamers can do is, if they're passionate about supporting games which are really strong on representation, or which have like a really cool diverse team, then vote with your wallets and make sure those games are successful, so that other publishers can be like, oh, like, let's make more games like that, because that's money's the way to make them listen, I think.
All right. And for my last question, what's your one career advice that you'd like to give to others who want to get into narrative roles in the gaming industry? And how important was your degree, your formal education, into coming into this space?
Okay, I will treat those as two different questions, if that's all right. So first, in terms of advice, my advice is to be proactive, take the initiative, and that includes things like creating your own portfolio. So obviously, if you're trying to enter the industry and you don't have any experience, I mean, like, that's a really tough position. A lot of us, how do you get experience when you don't have, a lot of studios want you to have experience for an entry-level role, and that is really tricky. And I think the trap I've seen some people fall into is thinking, well, that's me done then. I guess I'm just never going to get into games, or I'm just going to keep trying with no portfolio. And the thing that people need to be doing is taking the initiative and creating original pieces, like whether that's Twine games or games on like Renpai or Inky, or whether it's literally just like samples of like written scripts that aren't even like, set up in Twine or anything. Like, as long as they have a portfolio, if you have really strong writing, then for a good hiring manager, that should speak for itself. And they can at least say, well, they might not have experience, but they're a great writer, and I reckon that they could transfer that really, really well, and we could give them the experience that they need. So you don't necessarily have to go to a studio to get that. And it might obviously be stronger if you have shipped a game. But if you haven't, then you need to be taking that initiative and creating original samples. In terms of university, I think that one is very tricky, because obviously, I think especially in countries like the US, obviously education at university level is so expensive, and it's just not feasible. And so I'd be reticent to say like, oh, you have to get a degree or anything like that, because it's just not feasible. And it's definitely possible to be successful without it. So actually, my partner, he never finished his degree, and he's been very successful in his game dev career. And that was because he was taking the initiative. So the time that he spent not studying at university, he was learning through online courses, and he was taking part in online competitions, and like sharing his work in like open source online, and he was getting practical experience. And after having a few jobs and things by doing that stuff, he was like qualified enough that people just don't look at his degree anymore because he doesn't have one. But it doesn't matter that he doesn't have one, because he's like he's proven himself so many times over. And it's definitely possible to do that. But I guess the thing is that when you don't have a degree, you're going up against people who do. And so they will have that edge over you. So it definitely becomes a little bit harder. And also the thing you miss out on is that, I mean, a degree isn't just about the piece of paper that kind of gets you seen, right? It's also about what you learn on that degree. Like, I learned so much cool stuff just about like writing, or also about like philosophy. I did a philosophy module at university, which informed my final dissertation. And it's about what you can learn, which obviously you can learn some stuff online, but university, if you go to a place where you're really interested in what the lecturers have to say and them as people and as thought leaders, then you can learn really, really cool stuff from those people. And it's about their sort of mentorship, I guess. And that's what you get from a university that you won't get from online learning. So it's a decision that people kind of have to make for themselves. It's definitely riskier not to get a degree, but it is possible to still be successful. It's just you're going up against the odds, that's all.
If they can hustle on their own, like you were telling about your partner,
Yes.
then they can make
Yes.
it. But if they want to be safe, you better get a degree.
Yeah, I think degree definitely adds more structure to like forcing you kind of to knuckle down and study. If you're not going to get a degree, then you have to have that self-motivation and discipline to still study and still be learning, because at the end of the day, a studio is going to be looking at like, are you right for this job? Are you a better candidate than these other people who have a degree? So you better be able to prove that you are. Like, whether you have a degree or not, like you need to be able to prove that you are the best possible person to be trusted with that game. So yeah. It's tricky.
Okay, so that was all the questions from my side.
Nice.
For your closing comments on Spawn Point and this recording interview, whatever you want to call it.
Closing comments. Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I would say to anyone watching this, yeah, play some of Sumo's games. Mine are all still in progress, but Sumo Newcastle released Hood recently, Outlaws and Legends, and that one is fantastic. It's so much fun. So play that. Play Sackboy. Yeah. And enjoy. And yeah, watch this space. Hopefully I can announce some things in the coming years. So
yeah. So also when you end up becoming the narrative director, please keep me in mind. Please give
sure,
me the first interview. Trigger 2 should be on the top of your priority list when it comes out to going out to the media and stuff.
Fantastic. I will make sure to do that. And when you get hold of £1 billion, please find me so I can make my game.
Does making a game cost £1 billion?
No. Maybe some do. I don't know actually. I mean, I'm not on the production sort of finance side of things. I think millions, yes.
Red Dead Redemption, one of the costliest games, costed somewhere around $250 million. Now, if you are saying that the rest of the 800 million pounds or dollars are your fees, then that's something different.
I mean, if I had £1 billion, then I could pay everyone £1 million and still have loads left over. So that sounds great.
You can just pay 100 people $1 million. Wait, no. Forget it. I didn't read maths after 10th grade, so it's
all good.
It's fine. It's all good.
It's all good. Neither did I. We're in the same boat.
All right then, everyone. That was Sarah Longthorne on Spawn Point. I'll see you next week, next month, whenever the next episode comes up. All right. Goodbye now.